Today we are taking a look at a Danish classic, the frikadelle sandwich, basically a meatball sandwich that you can get in different sizes and variations all over Denmark. To make this beast of a sandwich, we need to make some lovely frikadeller, some burger buns, pickled cucumber salad, braised red cabbage, and finally a homemade remoulade. There's a lot of things to cover, so let's get down to business. Let's start with the pickled cucumber salad and braised red cabbage. In a small pot, take 200 ml of white vinegar and 200 ml of water and 100 gram of sugar. A couple of sprigs of thyme, a cinnamon stick, a couple of bay leaves, and some black peppercorns. And 2 teaspoons of sea salt or kosher salt. Bring all this to a low simmer and thinly slice up 2 cucumbers. Do not put your precious fingers into the blender like this. This is only for educational purpose to show you how not to do it. Put your cucumber slices in a bowl or colander and add a bit of salt to draw out moisture from the cucumbers. It will make them nice and crispy. Leave them for 30 minutes and give them a rinse before adding them to a sterilized jar and pour over the brine and put it in the fridge for a couple of hours. These will stay fresh for weeks in the fridge. Moving on to our braised red cabbage. Take a 1 kilo red cabbage and cut it into thin strips and melt 100 gram of butter in a pot and add the red cabbage. Cook the cabbage over low heat until it starts to shrink. Add 100 ml of white vinegar, 200 ml of cranberry juice, 3 tablespoons of sugar, a cinnamon stick, 2 pods of green cardamom, a couple of cloves and some black peppercorns, a couple of bay leaves and a pinch of salt. Leave the red cabbage to braise for up to 2 hours and pop it in a sterilized jar and put it in your fridge. Moving on to our remoulade, take 100 gram of a good mayonnaise, or preferably you can make it yourself, 1 tablespoon of Greek yogurt and 2 tablespoons of a nice piccalilli, and finally some of our pickled cucumber slices. Give it all a rough chop and at the end season it with salt and pepper and maybe a bit of turmeric to give it a nice vibrant color. And you can also add a bit of capers, it will give it a great taste. But for this video we didn't have any, so we didn't do that. Before we can make any sandwich or burger, we need some kind of carrier for all these delicious fillings. And I always make my own, and this recipe is the easiest in the world, but it's so good. Grab 100 ml of warm milk and 1 sachet of dry yeast. Dissolve the yeast in the milk and then add 16 gram of sugar and 6 gram of salt. Then the secret ingredient in this recipe is 150 gram of mashed potatoes. It gives it a super moist and delicious bun. Now add 340 gram of all-purpose flour and 70 gram of butter and mix it for 6 to 8 minutes and then pop the dough in a grease bowl and set it aside to proof until it's doubled in size. When the dough has doubled in size, dump it out on a floured surface and divide it into 6 pieces and shape it into buns. Put it on a baking tray and leave it to brew for 45 minutes to an hour, and brush it with egg wash and add some sesame seeds. I used black sesame seeds for extra coolness factor. Bake the buns for 12 to 15 minutes at 190 degrees Celsius and leave them on a cooling rack to cool off completely before using them. These buns are really amazing, so don't skip this step. Don't buy some cheap buns. These are really good. And now for the star of the evening, the frikadeller. Take 1 kilo of minced pork and add a generous amount of salt and give it a vigorous mix. Then add 90 grams of porridge oats and 1 large grated onion, 2 eggs and a good pinch of pepper, and give it all a good mix. And to mix this is probably a lot easier with your hands, or if you have a food processor, feel free to use that. Fry the frikadeller over medium heat until they get a nice dark surface. When shaping the frikadeller, it's much easier to use a spoon and dip it into some cold water and use the spoon and your hand to shape them. Turn the frikadeller a couple of times and cook them until they have this nice dark golden crust and they are cooked all the way through. Then put them in a tray and keep them warm in the oven until we are ready to assemble our frikadelle sandwich. Now let's get this bad boy put together. Start with slicing up your burger bun and add some remoulade to both sides. And then take your braised red cabbage and 2 to 3 frikadeller depending on its size. For this one we use 2 frikadeller and we cut them into 4 pieces. And then take your pickled cucumbers and finally add your lid to the burger or sandwich, and there you have it, a nice Danish classic frikadelle sandwich. I know this video was a little bit long, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope that you try to make this recipe at home. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time.